the bear who learned to share in the dense, sun-dappled woods of Pinecrest Forest, there lived a bear named Bramble. Bramble was strong and clever, with fur as dark as the night sky and eyes that glimmered like polished amber. But Bramble had one flaw that made him unpopular among the forest creatures. He was selfish. Whenever Bramble found a honeycomb, he would gobble it all himself, leaving nothing for the bees or the other animals. When the river was full of fish, he caught more than he could eat, refusing to share even a single trout with the hungry foxes and rabbits. Over time, the forest creatures learned to avoid Bramble, leaving him alone with his hoard of food. One chilly morning, Bramble awoke to find the forest unusually quiet. The birds weren't singing, the squirrels weren't chattering, and even the deer kept their distance. Shrugging, he padded toward the river to fish for breakfast, but as he approached, he discovered something troubling. The river had dried up. "What in the world?" Bramble growled, sniffing the cracked riverbed. He followed the dry river upstream, his powerful legs carrying him over rocks and fallen logs, until he reached the source. There, he found a massive boulderette rolled into the spring, blocking the flow of water entirely. Bramble pawed at the boulder, but it wouldn't budge. He tried pushing with all his might, but the heavy rock remained unmoved. Exhausted, he slumped onto the ground. Instead, he heard a small, timid voice. "Excuse me." Bramble looked up to see a tiny field mouse peeking from behind a tree. "Why? Are you here?" Bramble asked gruffly. I want to help," the mouse squeaked. "But alone, I'm too small. Maybe if we work together?" Bramble huffed. "I don't need help from a little mouse. I can handle this myself." But try as he might, Bramble could not move the boulder. Hours passed, and his stomach growled. Then more animals appeared, a family of beavers, a pair of foxes, even a young deer. Each offered their help, but Bramble, stubborn as ever, growled them away. As night fell, Bramble finally collapsed under a tree, hungry and tired. Alone in the cold darkness, he realized something he had never admitted before. Without the river, there was no fish, no berries, no water for him or anyone else. For the first time, Bramble felt fear and helplessness. The next morning, Bramble awoke to the sound of whispers and tiny footsteps. The animals had not given up. The beavers had gnawed at the rock, the deer and foxes had pushed from the sides, and the mouse had scurried to find smaller stones to chip away at the edges. Bramble felt a pang of guilt as he watched them. All his life he had taken from the forest without giving back. These small creatures, who he had often ignored or scared away, were risking themselves for something bigger than themselves, something that included him. Taking a deep breath, Bramble stepped forward. "I'll help." The forest seemed to hold its breath as Bramble joined in. With his mighty strength, he pushed from the top, while the beavers chewed and the smaller animals nudged from below. Together, they loosened the boulder. With a final heave, the rock toppled aside, and water gushed forth, sparkling under the morning sun. A cheer went up from the animals. Bramble felt a strange warmth in his chest, pride mixed with happiness. For the first time, he didn't feel alone. He looked at the small mouse and said, "Thank you for not giving up on me." The mouse smiled. "We wouldn't leave you behind, Bramble. Everyone deserves a chance to help." From that day on, Bramble's life changed. He no longer hoarded honey or fish. Instead, he shared his meals with the other animals. He built berry caches and honey stores and invited his forest friends to partake. And when storms came or winters were harsh, it was the forest that protected him, returning the kindness he had once refused to give. One autumn afternoon, Bramble and the mouse, whose name was Pip, walked along the riverbank. Fish leaped in the sparkling water, birds sang overhead, and the trees whispered in the gentle wind. "Do you remember," Pip asked, "when you first refused our help?" Bramble chuckled, shaking his head. "I do. I was so proud and so foolish. I thought strength meant doing everything alone, but I learned something better. Real strength comes from sharing, caring, and trusting others." Pip twitched his whiskers happily. "And we learned something too, that even the gruffest bear can change." Bramble smiled, feeling lighter than he had in years. For the first time, he understood the true joy of friendship and generosity. It wasn't about what he could take, it was about what he could give. Seasons changed, and Bramble became a legend in Pinkrest Forest. Young animals grew up hearing the story of the bear who had learned to share. And Bramble, he never forgot that lesson. He shared his food, his strength, and his heart, and in return, he received the greatest treasure of all, the love and trust of a whole forest. And so, the bear who once wandered alone, greedy and feared, became a symbol of kindness, courage, and the magic that happens when one opens their heart to others. Moral: true strength is not in taking or hoarding, but in sharing, helping, and trusting others. Generosity creates bonds that protect, uplift, and transform lives.